The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is sponsored by Two Fat Lardies, miniature war games with battle games, and by the generous donations of you, the listener. A huge shout out to Tom Ristola, Glenn Oberhauser, Alex McIntosh, Rex Withers, Andrew Gilmartin, James Anderson, Stephen Evans, and Tom Privatera. Guys, thank you so much for your generosity. You help to keep the show on the air. Thanks to everybody. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast, episode 152. The Great War. With hosts Neil Shuck and Dave Luff. This show was recorded on the 9th of July, 2015. Welcome to another episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. I'm Neil Shuck, and this evening I do something we've never done before. We're recording live
at the Meeples bunker.
The Meeples bunker with none other than Mr. Dave Luff. Hi, Dave.
Hello, Neil.
Yeah, I was thinking what we're going to call it, and isn't the Meeples game room? But no, yes, the Meeples bunker. Sounds
yeah, so we've got your Lard Island. Meeples have got the Meeples bunker.
The Meeples bunker. So here we are in the Meeples bunker, which is quite appropriate because today we're going to be talking about a game we've been playing for a couple of weeks, and yeah, we're going back to Meeples having. I mean, okay, some would argue that it's a miniatures game as well because it has plastic figures in it. Officially, it's a board game. We're going to be talking about the Great War from PSC Games. Otherwise known as the Plastic Soldier Company, and Richard Borg. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We've been playing a lot of Commander Colours recently, haven't we?
Well, yeah, we played Napoleonics, didn't we, on the lead up to the anniversary of Waterloo.
Yeah, we decided. I mean, I've got all the Commander Colours Napoleonics.
We've hardly used them.
Yeah. I think we haven't ever played it before. Before the last few weeks, we've only ever played it twice. I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And you know, because I'm me, I've got all the expansions, and we're thinking, come on, it's Waterloo, so we've got to celebrate Waterloo somehow. And
is that politically correct?
Commemorate. Okay, sorry, yes. Okay, yes, we have to commemorate the battle in some way. And it would seem appropriate, and because I haven't got a 6mm French painted army
yet,
I have the figures. I've got the figures. I just haven't got any painted.
Yeah, funny. When did you buy those? About a year after I first met you, which was what, about 10 years ago now.
Really? Was it? Oh yeah.
Well, I don't know, but I think Pete Berry's changed his French Napoleonic range about 3 times since you bought them, and he's only just finished it. Again. Yes, he has resculpted his entire French range since I bought it. So yes, I have all these figures that are now completely obsolete or collectible. Pete Berry would say they were collectibles.
Yes, they're collectible. Yes, I've got loads of them. Actually, funny enough, he's also resculpted his Romans since I bought my Romans off him. Which either means that don't buy what I buy off Pete Berry because you know he's about to resculpt the range.
Or don't ask Neil to paint them for you.
Or don't ask me to buy figures for you and then paint them and wait to game with them because you may be waiting for some time. Is that right, Dave?
Possibly.
So anyway, here we are. So we're in the bunker. So we decided to commemorate Waterloo. So we had 3 games. We did Quatre Bras, Linny, and
Big Mac Waterloo.
Big Mac Waterloo.
Which was...
Yes. Which,
The Prussians turned up and they were in more trouble than they were worth. If the Prussians hadn't turned up, I'd have probably won.
Yeah, suffice it to say, I've commented this in miniature war games in my miniature war games column, but suffice it to say, I think the scenario is a bit broken.
It was there, but not quite.
Not quite. It was close, but especially when the Prussians turn up and the French victory conditions never changed.
It was good, but it wasn't.
No,
a certain beer made in England. Probably, I bet Rich Clark drinks that because that's cooking lager, isn't it?
I couldn't possibly comment. Hello, Rich, by the
way. Just fire a missile from the bunker all the way over to Lard Island there.
You see, now you just killed our next invitation over to Lard Island. You realise that either that or he'll make sure he serves you cooking lager. One or the other. So anyway, we had 3 weeks of Commander Colours Napoleonics, which we'll probably come back and review because I don't know, mate, I really liked it.
Yeah, it definitely scratches an itch, but we did find, didn't we, on the last couple of games there was didn't quite work, does it, with the combined arms and everything. We felt the movement as such, not so much the combat. But as you've discovered, they're planning on maybe sorting that soon.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about that when we talk about the Great War, because looking at the next expansion for Command Colours Napoleonics, it looks like they're going to be putting it's potentially quite a major change into the mechanics, and it's taking a leaf out of what the Great War does. But as we'll discover, it's actually not original. It's actually not an original design, but. CNC does I think of them all, of all the games, I think CNC and Ancients are probably the two better ones of all the Command and Colour. I mean, yeah, I suppose that's arguable.
I quite like this. That's fair new, isn't it?
We'll discuss this. It is nice in the way CNC Napoleonics work, and we'll come on to this at some point when we go. Well, I'm sure we'll go back and review it. That is very different in the way, especially you have to cope with casualties, because casualty, unlike most CNC games, casualties do actually affect the effectiveness of units, and so it's different and it's quite nice. However, I enjoyed it. Whether or not it fully gives the flavour of Napoleonic combat or not is potentially open to debate.
I think it might do with the next expansion.
But all that being said,
get on with it.
We are on with it. Get on with it. All that said, I think we had a couple of enjoyable 3 weeks. And then, anyway, in the meantime, UK Games Expo came and went, and I picked up my Kickstarter copy of The Great War. From Will while at UK Games Expo, and we thought, well, once we finish doing Waterloo, we carry on in the same vein of Command and Colours, and we give the Great War a go. So we've played the introductory scenario, and then we played scenario 3, and we had to go through stuff. So we thought it'd be a really good idea to review the game. Let us know what we like about it, maybe what we don't like about it. Because as I say, it's only just kind of hitting the shops at the moment. I think as we're recording this, it's the 8th of July, and I think the final Kickstarter is being shipped this week. So pretty soon everybody will have a chance to be able to go out and get a hold of it. So hopefully this will give you some informed discussion as opposed to whether we think it's actually worth you going to get it or not, and if so, potentially what you can expect. So what we'll do, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into the review.
I must get through to Sergeant Watson's position. Jenkins, cover me.
Sir.
Whoa. Sergeant Watson, bring your men in. Withdraw.
It's all right, sir. We're enjoying ourselves.
What?
Yes, sir.
It's these here chain of command rules, sir. We're having great fun. Chain of command? That's right, sir. It's that challenging but fun blend of command and control. It gives me the freedom I want to fight the way I want to. Never had so much fun, sir. And we've cooked you some sausages. Can't be helped, sir. Me and the lads are staying put. Chain of Command World War II platoon level rules from two fat larders. They really put you in control. And they're even better than sausages.
Okay, so The Great War, as I say, designed by Richard Borg, published by PSC Games, comes in a
Natty box
with a cover art and, well, it's not just a cover art, it's a card art by Peter Dennis.
It's linen as well, isn't it?
Yeah, linen finish. Yes, it's
linen finish.
Yeah, it's nice. So, what do you get in the game? So you start off, you get a board, double-sided. One side is green fields, the other side is mud. Interestingly enough, all the scenarios show up have the green field side up on all the scenarios, whereas I think it's probably more realistic on a lot of them just to have mud. Whether or not that's a design choice to say, well, basically that means you can see the terrain easier. But double-sided board. First thing you know, it's a bigger board than what you normally expect as far as Command and Colours are concerned. Standard size for a Command and Colours board is 9 hexes by 13. Okay, and this is 11 hexes by 13, so it's 2 hexes deeper. It does make a little bit of difference. And especially with the fact that, I mean, again, as we'll come into, we've got a lot of range combat going on, so it does mean that you do have to, manoeuvre more within the game. But very nice double-sided board. Right, so you've got 7 terrain punch boards, all sorts of double-sided terrain as what you'd normally expect. So you've got these double-sided terrain tiles. Which again you've got hills, buildings, trees. The illustrations on these are really nice. You've got trenches, and more trenches. You've got loads and loads of trenches.
Hills.
You've got a few hills. Some craters.
Wire.
Yeah. Then there's a special character sheet with some wire and some shell craters.
Mine craters.
A mine crater, that's particularly, there's a couple of scenarios that take place on the Somme, and it's around a mine a mine explosion underneath the trench. And they're really nice, good artwork on them. The trenches are interesting. You've got, the majority of the trenches are just go, right across one hex. However, there are several junctions and bends.
Which are handed,
yes. Yes, there are left and right-handed, especially when you've got like T-junctions, for example. Obviously, because it's a hex board, when you have a T-junction, it isn't a proper T-junction. It goes off either left. It's effectively a Y-junction, which goes off either left or right. And there are both. I mean, there is one which is a proper Y-junction where everything goes off a 60-degree angle. But when you've got like 2 lines of trenches and communication trenches linking them, those go off at 60-degree angles because they follow lines of hexes as opposed to being 90 degrees. That in itself potentially causes issues.
No, I don't think it is. It's just a mini game within the game.
A mini game within the game?
Yeah, it's Jigsaw. It's the Great War Jigsaw. That's what that is. So it's like all these new, it's like The Witcher 3 has got a card collection game in it now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So, all the good games, all the kids are doing it now. You have a little game within a game.
Game within the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, to explain, the reason is, a lot of these trenches, because you've got a trench, you've got a two-sided trench, so you've got a straight trench on one side, and then on the flip side, rather than having hills, you have a trench with a junction.
Yeah. Which can be interesting. when you've used all the straight bits already, and the other end's got the junction you need.
And yeah, so then you've got to go through everything you just laid out, flipping all the tiles over, looking for the junction that you actually need. Because it has to be said, it's the Great War. It's aimed between 1915 and 1917.
And funnily enough, it involves trenches.
Lots and lots of trenches.
Who'd have thought it?
Indeed. So the majority of your scenery is trenches. And putting the whole scenery together, Great War jigsaw. So putting the
2 games for the price of 1.
There we go. But having said that, the artwork on all the tiles
is nice.
It is really nice. It's really well done.
All the artwork throughout the entire game's nice.
Yeah. And then you get a whole bunch of you get victory tokens. You got these things called HQ tokens, which we'll come on to shortly. Right, now you get not 1 pack of cards, but 2. Now, for those of you who may or may not be familiar with Command and Colours, the way Command and Colours works is each player has a hand of cards, what they call command cards. Okay. The board is divided into 3 sections. You have a centre and 2 flanks, and you have a series of command cards. Okay, and these will give orders. So they will allow you to order a certain number of units in a certain number of areas. Some will just be literally down to order 3 units on the right flank, order all units in the centre, 2 units on the left flank. Others will specifically allow you to order all types of 1 unit.
They're sort of very standard sort of C&C fare, aren't they, those cards?
Yeah, as I say, it's but say if you've not come across this before, this is if you've not played a C&C game before, this is what they're there for. They are basically
your basic movement and do cards.
Yeah, and part of that, they're part of the whole kind of command movement restrictions on all your units throughout the game. So basically, what you do, you have a hand of command cards. Normally, let's say 5 or 6, and normally what you would do is on your turn you can play 1 command card. So this simulates your command and control for your turn. Okay, only a certain number of your units are ever only going to get ordered in a particular turn. And generally, part of the whole tactics behind Command and Colours is hand management. It's getting a series of command cards in a particular area that you can play them over consecutive turns.
Yeah.
That will basically
keeping your hand well, sort of with everything on the board as covered as much as possible, as in centre, left, and right. Really.
Yeah, but at the same time, also meaning that you can actually put together a coherent attack in 1 or 2 sectors.
You mean like charge now?
Charge sounds perfectly fine to me.
Yeah, thought so. Carry on.
Yeah. I don't know the problem. I don't know what the problem is. I mean, bayonet charges. I mean, what's the issue? Anyway, so you have a command deck, and that is fairly standard fare. That is something that we've seen in every single Command and Colours game that we've played. Now, when you think, okay, what are the Command and Colours out there? Okay, we've got Command and Colours Napoleonics, we've got Command and Colours Ancients, you've got Memoir 44, you've got Battle Cry, which is an ACW one. You've got Battle Law, 2 versions of it now. The original, which was a fantasy and medieval game from Days of Wonder, that was then bought by Fantasy Flight Games, and they brought out a 2nd edition of that last year with 28mm models, which I haven't played in the flesh. Although I've played I've recently been playing the phone app version of it, which is actually quite good. But it's been around in various different guises. So as I say, the Great War is the latest version of this. So command cards appear in all versions of this game. However, this game has a 2nd set of cards, doesn't it, Dave?
Oh yes. Nasty these cards can be. Can change the game quite considerably, can't they, Neil?
Indeed. Yeah, just a bit. Okay, so these are called combat cards, and there is a deck of 40 of them. Now, you may have seen these before because in some of their effects are similar-ish. I mean, if you play Battle Lore, the lore cards in Battle Lore, it does exactly the same thing as the lore cards in Battle Lore. And when we were talking about the way the change that is coming on in Command and Colours, Napoleonics, the next expansion for Command and Colours Napoleonics is introducing what they're calling a tactical deck into that game, which is it's the same mechanic. Okay, it's the same mechanic. So basically, you have a separate set of these combat cards, and you have a particular number of them available to you during the game. You may have a hand of 2 or 3, and actually, depending on the scenario, each side may have a different number of them available to you. Okay?
And you have the option of being able to discard them throughout the game as well and pick up new ones.
Yeah.
As and when, if you use them, or you can discard them and get rid of them if you find that the ones in your hand are no use.
Indeed. Now, on all the cards, there's a whole bunch of artwork, which again is done by Peter Dennis, which looks really cool.
Good card stock.
Yeah. Really nice, really well produced, again. Okay? Now, these combat cards basically allow you to do special things during the game, and they all cost what they call HQ tokens. HQ tokens, which you gather throughout the game in a couple of different ways. Okay, but that's this second deck of cards. So that's this second deck of cards that you get. So effectively, you have 2 card hands to manage. You have your orders cards, and then you have these combat cards,
which are basically your special orders.
Special orders. Special movements, how to really mess around with your enemy, and some of them really do mess around with your opponent. On top of that, you've got some etched dice, wooden etched dice, some standard D6, 5 standard D6, which is unusual for a Command and Colours game, but you need those actually for artillery, because we have artillery in this game, as you'd expect from a World War One game, and it features a lot. It really is,
and you really need those D6s to sort of get the scatter and just show you how ineffective artillery was. Sometimes it was really good, other times it was waste of time,
complete rubbish. Indeed, that sounds a bit heartfelt, Dave.
Yeah. Speaking from experience.
And then finally, the last major component in the game, other than the rulebook, which it's again a very nice rulebook. It's how many pages have we got here? It's so about 50 odd pages, 52-page rulebook. You've got a couple of unit and summary sheets, terrain summary sheets, double-sided. They're actually both double-sided with Brits on the other side, aren't they?
Yeah.
It would have been nice to have one that was Brits and one that was Germans. I know it costs more, but if you look at like the Command and Colours ones, for example, the Command and Colours ones are themed, so you have so the opponents actually have different have different versions. It's just a page of money takes your choice thing, I suppose. And yes, it would cost more money, but it's just an aesthetics thing, really. So the rulebook has 16 scenarios in it. If you back the Kickstarter, you've got 2 extra scenarios, which are printed out on A4 paper.
That makes them more collectible and rare, that does.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. But at least you got them. And they're another couple of...
they'll be going on eBay for £10 each, they will be. Because they won't be available anywhere else.
Yes, coming to a photocopier near you. Although I do not condone that in any way, shape or form. But, I can imagine. Anyway, 16 scenarios. There's a couple of introductory scenarios. It takes you through the basic mechanics of the game. To be honest, there are 2 scenarios. They are effectively the same scenario, and the second one introduces what they call no man's land shelling. Personally, I think there should only be one introductory scenario, because actually without that, I think what's introduced with no man's land shelling, because all the other scenarios, basically it's effectively a pre-game bombardment of no man's land. No Man's Land normally has wire across it, and essentially you have a.
It's a randomness of shells dropping short, isn't it, from previous actions? Really, is what it is doing.
But what it does is that it creates shell craters in No Man's Land
and holes in wire that
and holes in
repaired.
Wire. Yeah, which
possibly anyway, because it's totally random, so it makes each game different.
Yeah, but why on earth you would have a starter scenario without it? I mean, I can kind of see why. Yeah, he's just introducing you into it, but at the same time, that cover that he's created
makes a hell of a difference to the game.
Oh, it does. Yeah, because as you can imagine, I mean, yeah, this is a World War One game, and yet cover is massively important. So actually, playing a scenario, as I discovered. Playing a scenario where actually what you're doing first of all is you're doing a trench raid, but you've got no cover in between the two sets of trenches, unless you physically create it yourself by laying a barrage, and then hoping that you create shell craters, which are not difficult to do are not easy to do in the middle of a game. Yeah, I think maybe 2 introductory scenarios. It might have been better just having the one. It's a personal thought. But anyway, other than that, so the 14 scenarios left cover 3 basic battles. You've got scenarios around the Battle of Luz. You've got scenarios around the Somme. And then you've got scenarios around Vimy Ridge. Okay, and I think it's 4, 5 and 4. And then, I say, the 2 extra scenarios that you get if you back the Kickstarter are both along the Somme. The last thing to talk about in what you get in the game, the miniatures. You get 162 minis in the game of Germans and Brits. 15mm scale, and you get basically three identical sprues for each side. So you get 48 infantry, you get 3 machine gun teams, 3 mortar teams, and 3 special figures, which are bombers. Okay, they're basically figures with grenades. Okay, because you can make a specific unit called a bomber unit. Okay, interestingly enough, you don't get any light machine guns, so no Lewis guns.
No Lewis guns.
No, no equivalents on the German side.
No engineers.
No engineers.
So
no sappers.
There's no creeping out into No Man's Land and digging a new trench system into a couple of rounds that have dropped short.
No,
which would be nice.
Some of these special cards that I mentioned do formulate things like being able to cut through wire and stuff like that.
No snipers.
No, that's a big thing. No snipers, which we were really surprised about. It has to be said. And we have been through the cards, and certainly the one thing we haven't come across is a sniper, which we were quite surprised about.
Or anyone smoking a cigarette.
No, I think there's possibly one or two around, maybe.
What, with the sniper as well?
They're hidden with the sniper.
You are caught in the trench smoking a cigarette above the parapet.
So that's basically what comes in the game. There are cigarettes.
Ooh,
you've not seen that card, have you?
No, this is what I've seen. 3 on a match. All right, okay.
Anyway, there are good and bad things about the figures. They're hard plastic, which from a miniature gaming point of view, it's something that anybody who's bought, especially figures from Plastic Soldier Company, will be very familiar with. From experience and from reading message boards on Board Game Geek, I know that having minis attached to sprues is some board gamers' worst nightmare, isn't it?
Because they're board gamers, not war gamers.
Not war gamers. So if they have any figures, they expect all the figures to be kind of loose.
At minimum.
And
if not painted.
Yes. And definitely assembled. And the fact of them having to glue figures together.
There isn't a massive amount of figures to glue together, is there, to be fair? But
to be fair, actually, the only thing you have to glue together are the machine gunners.
So yeah, you're not going to be sitting there for hours
They are in 3 pieces.
putting 162 plastic figures together.
No.
It's just going to be. There's just what is it?
It's the machine
guns. It is just the machine guns.
It's just the machine guns. Isn't it?
The mortar is a one piece.
Yeah. However, from a board gamer point of view, as opposed to a wargamer point of view, a miniature wargamer, that's nothing. Any board gamers, I can assure you, would not be overly impressed with the fact that the first thing you could do is clip all the figures off the sprues. Now, for the Germans, that's not a problem. Everything comes off really, really, really fine and dandy, no issues at all. The Brits, clipping the minis off the sprues, it's a bit of an issue. All the Brit models are sculpted, or all the British infantry are sculpted with rifles with fixed bayonets. We were surprised. We actually ended up looking this up, didn't we? We were quite surprised on how long a bayonet on a Shortly Enfield was.
Yeah.
Was it 22 inches?
I don't know. I got a few pictures up, didn't I? It was long anyway.
It was somewhere between 17 and 22 inches for a fixed bayonet.
It's more like a short sword.
Yeah. So we were quite surprised because we really thought surely these things are not in scale. Apparently they are. However, and I think part of it is down to the plastic they're cast in. If you look at the plastics for comparable games, say let's say Memoir 44 or Battle Cry, especially the 150th edition of Battle Cry, okay, had all plastic minis for Confederates and... Oh, sorry, you're not allowed to say Confederate anymore, are you?
No?
Or is it just flying the flag?
Is it? I don't know. Can't even say the word Reb.
Have you not been watching the news?
Yeah, I have seen some of it.
Yeah, the Confederates and the Union are in soft plastic, either grey or blue. So they were soft plastic, and so even things like bendy swords on the cavalry and what have you wasn't an issue. However, because these are hard plastic, and on all the sprues, on all the figures bar about 2 on each figure sprue, all the Brits had run-offs on their bayonets.
Which connected it to the sprue.
Now, from a casting point of view, you can understand, because it's a thin piece of plastic. You need to make sure that piece of plastic gets filled as part of...
Maximises the chance of not having a mismould.
Yeah. However, it also means that has to be cut from the sprue when you're removing the figure. Now, I knew about this because I'd seen a couple of entries on Board Game Geek where people are kind of going, I have broken loads of my figures, my British figures. I have snapped a load of bayonets while removing them from the sprue. So I was aware of the fault. So I was making sure that I was putting the least amount of strain. I mean, whether it's supporting it with your fingers, whether it's making sure that that's the thing you move first, or even trying to remove the runoff from the actual sprue before you then went along the runoff and actually cut the runoff off the bayonet. And even doing that because of the flex, basically, in just the way the plastic snaps off the figure. Sometimes even then, that broke the joint between the bayonet and the rifle. So I must have lost 6 or 8, 6 or something like that. About half a dozen bayonets, and I knew about it. Okay, so I can imagine some people tearing their hair out with this. Other than that, the figures are perfectly fine. But I can certainly see that, because it breaks a figure. And I mean, I'm OCD enough to let that really annoy me.
Yeah, you were thinking about cutting them all off and just having them without bayonets. You were at one point.
Yeah, it was like, I've broken one. That's it. I've got to take them all off because that one now looks different.
I think it's a shame. It's only a small thing. It is a shame though. I mean, the figure does look nice, and it does look nice with the bayonet. But maybe as a sculpting point of view, it might have been easier just to have done them without the bayonet. None of the Germans have got bayonets.
No.
So why have the British got to have bayonets? Maybe is it just to make them so they look a little bit different on the table? So that I don't know.
Although, again, it has to be said that when it comes down to scenarios, the vast majority of the time the British will be attacking. So,
but that's for these scenarios. I'm sure that will change as the expansions come out.
But, the thought is, fixed bayonets go over the top. Innit? Blackadder.
Well, yeah.
If you are gamers of a particular age, you will discover that you're quoting an awful lot of Blackadder as you're playing the game. I don't know why.
There isn't a cunning plan card, is there?
There isn't. No, disappointingly.
Maybe there's a spin-off there for him. He could do a Blackadder combat card deck.
There's a pigeons card.
There is a pigeons card.
It's not called
the King's Carrier Pigeon.
It's not called. Yeah, it's not called. What was Meltit's pigeon called?
Speckled Jim.
You see what I'm going to put with, guys. Here is a card. Yes, it hasn't got a pigeon card called Speckled Jim, but it has got a messenger pigeons card.
The Flanders pigeon murderer. He shot my Speckled Jim.
Right. It's not quite as bad as quoting the Holy Grail, but it's close. Anyway, so the figure's really nice, but there was a couple of issues. As you say, when it comes down to special units and stuff, okay, we have bombers, but we don't have Lewis gunners.
Snipers.
Or snipers, which is a bit of a shame. And then, if you back the Kickstarter, you have artillery pieces. Oh, and you also have some. You also have some generals. Don't think we've got any rules. You meant to end up with some special rules at some point for generals. We haven't got those yet. Although I don't know if they're going to be appearing as downloads on the website.
I've heard that the rules apparently involve that you have to actually take the general and put him in the opposite room behind you from where you're playing to represent the general being behind the lines.
Is that on top of a Helter Skelter?
Yeah, possibly. Or in the drinks cabinet is normally a favourable one, but It's got to be outside of the room apparently.
Oh, okay. Right.
It's got to be realistic, hasn't it?
Indeed. Yeah, and not a donkey in sight. There we go. Yeah. So in the Kickstarter, you also have these artillery pieces, which are nice models, really well done. I think from the game point of view, the models of the artillery are not really required.
They're an added extra, aren't they, for someone?
They're an added extra, and some people want to go, oh yeah, that's quite cool. They basically replace a token, okay, which denotes your artillery strength.
An artillery chit, isn't it? At the end of the day?
There's an artillery chit which tells you what your artillery strength is.
And again, it's nice artwork.
Yeah, and you can replace those with little models of artillery if you really wanted to. Personally, I'm quite happy with the chit, honestly.
I do. I quite like the chit. Like I say, it's nice artwork. I mean, later on, as I did mention last week, they might play a bit of a different role in the game.
Yeah,
and then you might think, you don't know having the figures.
You don't know what's coming in the expansions, do you?
No, and I think there'll be. I mean, there's so many options, isn't there? I mean, we've just mentioned ones alone with just having engineers, snipers, and Lewis gunners, flamethrowers, stormtroopers. Crikey!
Yeah, I mean, we know the stuff
observation planes, balloons.
Yeah, tank. I mean, we know the stuff coming with tanks for Essen, so we already know about that one. And of course, next year we got the French, because obviously. There was a comment made as soon as it came out to say, hang on, you got British and Germans. Where are the French? The French are coming next year. Apparently there are French tanks coming next year as well. If you listen to the interview I did with Will go that away.
I mean, the year after that we'll have the Doughboys turn up.
It's a possibility, I suppose. Okay, so that's everything you get in the box, okay, plus some of the extras that you get in the Kickstarter. Now, on the Plastic Soldier Company site, you can buy extra sets of infantry. You can buy extra sets of artillery, you can buy extra game boards, you can buy extra sets of cards. So all most of the component pieces are available separately. Okay, which actually in itself makes a bit of a change. And extra scenery tokens as well. So they're all so most things are available separately. Which, as I say, it is different because most board games that doesn't happen. So that itself is actually quite a different approach, and I suppose again it's this difference of a board game being produced by a minis company as opposed to a board game company who will only turn around and say, "Oh no, I'm sorry, you've got to buy the box." So there's a lot of options available if you wanted to expand, and of course with the figures themselves, there is certainly one eye on the miniatures market, with people wanting to play World War One in 15mm. Generally, as I say, these are great for them, but there is the caveat that at this present time, some of the stuff that as a war gamer you might need, like Lewis guns,
snipers,
engineers, aren't available.
Stretch bearers.
But I'm sure they will be coming soon to an expansion near you.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
Yeah. So that's everything you get. So what's the game actually like? We've played a couple of games of this now. As a general thing, the game plays as any other Command and Colours game. The command cards work in exactly the same way, or the majority of the same way. There's possibly a few more special command cards to do with artillery bombardments and stuff. One of the big differences. I talked about the difference in scenarios setups. So you set up your scenario, and it denotes usually the trench systems. More likely than not, what you've got is one trench system for the Brits and 2 or 3 trench systems for the Germans. And the idea is for the British to capture the objectives are normally that the British capture 1 or 2 of the German trench systems. Normally you'll tend to find that these scenarios are geared around British attacks. So the British will tend to have more troops available than the Germans, although that isn't always the case. But effectively you're gaming an advance by the British, into particular areas. So the fact that the scenarios are generally British attacks, I suppose it's just down to the particular scenarios that have been chosen. And of course, the one thing with Command and Colours games is that they are designed to play fast enough that you can play both ways around in an evening.
Yes. Not this one.
Yeah, we'll have a chat about that. But usually, Command and Colours games play quick enough that you can play 2 games in under the...
Because Command and Colours isn't designed to be even sides.
No.
You have a scenario and then you play it one way and then you swap over your mate and you play it the other way and you count up the chits at the end, and if you've got more chits than the other chap, you're playing both ways, you're the winner.
Yeah. So, they're not designed necessarily to be even scenarios, but the whole point is to try, even if you lose, to try and get as many flags, as many victory points as possible.
Yes, there's losing and there's losing well.
Indeed. Yes, there's close losses and there's being being thrashed to within an inch of your life.
And I think some of the previous incarnations of it, they actually put the percentages up, don't they? If you play this scenario and you play as this side, you have a 10% chance of winning or a 30% chance of winning.
Yeah,
which is even better when you do it. It's even better bragging rights, isn't it? When you pull off a 30% win ratio on playing a certain scenario as a certain side.
Yeah. But so it's designed. The scenarios are usually designed to play both ways round. Under the space of an evening, which we would suggest in this game is perhaps a little challenging.
It's only an hour a game, isn't it? On most settings.
Yeah, I mean, even these rules, I think they basically turn around and say, it should be playable in 90 minutes. Well, I mean, after you play Jigsaw with played Jigsaw set in the scenario, I mean that's half hour to begin with.
It's worth it though. It's worth the wait.
Okay, so the things that are different, as I say, we got this effectively a pre-game barrage that takes place over all no man's land, which is a random laying down of shell craters, basically,
across no man's land. So these are shell craters that have been created by a bombardment that has taken place before the attack. These could put holes in wire, but also provides cover of no man's land, because yes, machine guns are nasty in this game. Being out in the open in this game is
very nasty.
Is very nasty. Being in trenches provides decent cover. Breaking out of trenches and going into no man's land where you don't have cover is, what's the phrase, not recommended.
Suicidal, I think.
Yeah.
Which is what you learnt to your cost.
Charge. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never mind.
And that's even after reducing your... Yeah, I mean, we thought after one game... I'll tell you, I'll get onto that in a minute. We'll get onto that when we thought, when we discuss what we think of the game. Okay, so there's a pre-game barrage, which generates some cover for no man's land, which, believe me, you'll need. Okay, now, two big changes in the game. One we've already discussed, one we really haven't. First is these combat cards. The second is the use of artillery. Okay, now, during the game, each player has off-table artillery available to them. Okay, and this is where these artillery chips we've been talking about, which have been replaced by the models if you really want to. But basically, there's an artillery chip which gives you a value of your artillery which is between 2 and 5, which is basically how many dice you roll. That's how many d6 you roll.
More dice.
Better
it is.
Indeed.
It's funny enough.
And what happens is, when you have a section order card, or when you have an order card, that order card says order this X number of units. Okay. Now sometimes that will say X number of battlefield units, which means you can only order units that are physically on the board. However, if it says X number of units as opposed to X number of battle units, that means that card, one of those actions of that card can be used to order artillery. Okay? If it's for a particular section, that artillery can only fire into that section. Otherwise, it can fire on anywhere on the board. And it is anywhere on the board. So basically what happens is, you have this scatter template. Okay? Hexagonal scatter template. Which, rather conveniently, has 6 sides because you have 6-sided dice. It's amazing how this game just kind of falls into place, isn't it?
It just scatters because it's a scatter template, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, what you have is you set down your artillery and say, okay, you put your template on a hex. Well, actually, normally you don't put it on the hex. You put it somewhere near the hex and say, I'm aiming over there, because normally the hex you're aiming at has got models in it, and the template doesn't balance. So you put it somewhere near the hex, just to say, okay, yeah. And then you roll a number of dice equal to your artillery score, your artillery strength. Okay. The template has obviously 1 to 6 around it. Where what the dice are is where the shells land. It always assumes that at least one hit goes onto your aiming point. And then you've got stuff that scatters around it.
But that's just a hit. That's just a shell landing in that area. That's not actually you rolling for effect, which comes afterwards.
This comes afterwards. And then what happens is that if you roll any doubles or triples, what happens is that scatter area gets extra hits. But for every extra hit you get on the scatter area, you also get an extra hit in the middle. Or actually in your aim point. So, for example, if you roll a double 3, you'll get 2 hits on the area that's scatter 3, but you'll also get an extra hit in your aim point. So you'll get 2 hits in your aim point as well. If you get 3 hits in your aim point, you'll cause a shell crater.
Which shell crater goes on first, doesn't it? Before you roll for effect, which is handy. So you're destroying a possible trench.
Yeah, or you're destroying an area of. So usually it would be case trenches. So you actually make, and it also means that for that particular turn or that particular hit, any scenery is negated
But it doesn't happen when you want it to.
No.
This is an added extra if it possibly might happen.
If you can.
Don't build your strategy around this actually ever working.
Yeah.
That's nice.
That sounds a bit heartfelt.
Yeah, it is. Artillery are suitably ineffective in the Great War, which I like. It's not a complaint.
Yeah. So, but basically, once you determine everywhere that has a hit, you then basically roll your standard CNC dice to see what effect that has. Now, the CNC dice is a 6-sided dice and it has icons on each side. Okay, for this game, 2 sides have an infantryman. There's a star. There's a flag. There's an explosion, and there's a skull. Okay, infantry basically takes out infantry. Explosion kills anything. A flag is a retreat. A star is you can take a HQ token. And a skull is a hit under certain circumstances. I think it's a hit for artillery.
Yeah.
And it's a hit
for bombers.
For bombers. So, and it's a hit in close combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a hit part of the time. But basically, so that's right. So you always get the opportunity to fire artillery in a turn. Or almost always get the opportunity. But artillery costs these HQ tokens in order to fire, because you've physically got to order them separately.
Yeah, and your command cards, or combat cards, aren't they? Are they called combat cards?
Cards.
I always get them mixed up.
Yeah, because these are command cards. These are combat cards.
Your combat cards, which allow you to do the special abilities, they also cost you HQ points. So you've always got that balancing act of what you want to spend your bits on.
Yeah, do you want to use your artillery, or is it more useful using them on combat cards? And although you get more HQ points in the game, they are a finite resource. So what you'll tend to find is that you'll end up either looking for a perfect storm where you've got the perfect hand of command cards, combat cards, and the resources or to spend stuff. So you can have a couple of devastating turns, and up until that point you're not doing an awful lot. Or you're constantly chewing through your HQ tokens, because you're constantly firing your artillery or what have you, especially if you're in defence. So, which kind of brings us nicely onto the way these HQ tokens and combat cards work. Okay, so we talked about HQ tokens. You get a certain number allocated to you at the start of the game. Okay, as we said, they help you fire artillery, but they're also the resource that you need for playing these combat cards. Now, the combat cards add all sorts of nice little effects into the game. Now, you sorted some out, haven't you, Dave?
Yeah, my favourite that you love, don't you, Neil? Because I've played it on twice now.
Every single. I mean, we've only played 2, but every game. Yeah.
Well, it's called Matahari Spy. It's a horrible one to play. So, draw 3 command cards at random from your opponent's hand. Choose 2 cards to be discarded and return 1 card to your opponent. Opponent will then draw 1 additional card each turn until his hand is back to the starting number.
So it can completely screw your opponent over as far as what orders cards they've got in their hand.
It's great to play when if you want to do an attack down a certain side, or you know that your opponent wants to do an attack down a certain side because he's been pushing a certain side. You take 3 out of his hand. Sometimes you're playing only with 5, aren't you?
Yeah.
Out your hand, so you can look at more than 50% of his hand and then go, "Thank you very much. You're not having those 2 left-handers that you really want next turn."
Yeah, because obviously you're aware of what's going on and where the pressure points are on the battlefield, and of course, as I say, if you know that you're about to attack on the right, so he'll need to defend on the left.
I mean, but having said that, that's an expensive card to play.
Well, that's
and that
fine,
costs you 5 HQ points, that does.
Yeah.
I mean, and then to give a bit of an example, which I never knew this one existed until you pulled it out the deck tonight, which is called Lice. Which I love it. It goes, Lice are attacking the target unit. And what it stops is that your target unit won't be able to ignore any flags that he rolls, but it only costs 1 token, so a lot cheaper.
Yeah, and you get things like You can get things like, for example, in combat. Now, people playing Command and Colours games may be familiar that in some games, when you attack in melee, you automatically get to battle back. That's something that happens in Command and Colours Napoleonics. Also happens in Command and Colours Ancients.
Think Memoir.
This is like Memoir. You don't automatically. If someone attacks you in melee or in close combat, you don't automatically get to battle back. There are cards that allow you to. It's a card called Button Bayonet, which you can play, which will allow you to battle back, for example.
There's quite a few of those in the deck as well.
There's a few, yeah, there are a few. Yeah, there's a couple which are devastating. There's one here called Stretcher Bearer. Okay, costs 4 HQ points, but basically you play it on either an enemy unit or a friendly unit in any section, and that unit is removed from the battlefield. Now, that means for 4 points, you can take out an enemy unit. You can just remove it from the battlefield.
You don't get a token for it, though, do you?
No, you don't get a victory medal for it, but you can remove it from play.
So you're tactically removing a unit for doing that. That's
When you play that, and one of the 3 main units in your attack suddenly disappears from your front line, it's caused a bit of an issue.
You've not had that happen to you, have you now?
I can vaguely remember it happening to me. Oh no, I did it to you, didn't I?
No, I did it to you. You went charge, and I went Stretcher Bearer, and you went what?
Then you get things like machine gun barrages, which basically means that you can order your machine guns to fire twice. They roll extra dice. There's a lot of things that do that sort of thing, which it gives you combat bonuses. There's extra bits and pieces you can do. You can do the same with mortars. You can fire ambushes. There's all sorts of different little bits and pieces. Things that allow you to, there's one called return fire, which means that if you're fired upon, you can then play that card and you can return fire that turn. So there's all these little different nuances that they add for HQ points. So there were some nice ones. There were some really nasty ones. There's things that help you with assaults. There's so lots of little different bits and pieces.
Trench foot. Enemy unit may not battle or move this turn.
Yeah. And so some of these are...
They're good flavour, aren't they?
They are. You get things like you get trench raids, which gives bonuses in combat to a particular unit, and there's loads of different bits and pieces. They give you those extra, bits of flavour, extra things you can do during your turn, and a lot of these combat cards you play alongside your orders card. Some you can play at any point. Most you play alongside your orders card and say, okay, at this point I'm now doing this, and it allows you to take an action. But all these take HQ tokens. The only way you get HQ tokens, obviously you get some at the start of the game. The only other way you get hold of them is if you either roll a HQ token symbol on a combat dice, or at the end of your turn, if you don't pick up a combat card, you can pick up 2 HQ tokens instead. And so HQ tokens are potentially in quite short supply. So you really do have to harbour them and plan what you're going to do with them. And as I say, with the fact that you're using them with artillery as well, means that
artillery eat into them, don't they? I think that's the main thing. The cards don't eat into them as much as the artillery do. The artillery do eat into them a lot.
Artillery, it's you can basically what happens is you can play as many HQ tokens up to the value of your artillery each turn, and the number of HQ tokens you pay are the number of dice you roll to the maximum of the value of your artillery.
Yeah.
So if it's slightly, I think it's slightly different to what I said earlier. So if your artillery has 4, you can spend up to 4 HQ tokens to have your artillery to fire. You can actually spend 2 HQ tokens and have your artillery fire with 2 dice, but you can't spend more than 4 tokens to have them fire 5 times with 5 dice. You can only actually have them fire a maximum of 4. Artillery is very different. The combat cards add a different flavour.
Artillery really are used best way, isn't it? Is as a tactical use rather than as a game-winning power weapon as such. It isn't.
No, it's not at all.
Anyone's worried that it's going to be a shell fest. It isn't. It's definitely a tactical positioning, isn't it? Tactical use of artillery rather than a wonder weapon.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, for example, I mean, I've used it in a couple of occasions where, like, you know, if your opponent is bunching up his units prior to an attack, you kind of go, oh right, okay, I'll try and drop an artillery shell into the middle of that to see if I can, you know, cause some damage. Yeah, sometimes it works. The majority of the time, it doesn't. It can be effective.
It can also be very ineffective.
Yeah. But having said that, this kind of starts to bring us on to a bit more of the discussion of you know, what we think about the whole thing. One thing we forgot to talk about the units. We talked about models. We haven't actually physically talked about the units. I know we talked about artillery. Okay, units in the game. There are 4 different units in the game. Okay, there's infantry. There are machine guns. There are mortars. And then there's these special bomber figures which convert an infantry unit into a bomber section. Now, interestingly, this is something that we picked up from a tactical point of view. The Great War appears to be at a lower level from a lot of the games we've played in the past.
More company.
Yeah, this seems to be much more level, like a company level, isn't it?
Mm.
Or maybe even slightly lower, but certainly like company level. As opposed, from a tactical point of view, as opposed to
divisional brigade. And some other ones.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more, as I say, kind of a tactical sort of level. Now, obviously, in this game, with it being modern weapons, weapon ranges are longer than what you normally expect. Although, having said, I mean, they're longer than Memoir. They're certainly longer than most things in Memoir.
Yeah.
Thinking of some of the stuff in Battle Cry, I think maybe has a similar sort of range to some of the stuff in Battle Cry. But anyway, okay. So as we mentioned, artillery, and this is off-table artillery, can effectively fire anywhere on the board. Infantry have a range of up to 4 hexes. Machine guns have a range of up to 5 hexes. Mortars have a range of up to 6 hexes. And bombers are basically effective at a range of 2 hexes. Because they're, like I say, hand grenades. Now, obviously, as range increases, effectiveness tails off. It's especially prevalent with infantry. Infantry roll 3 dice in effectively close combat. It's 2 dice at range 2, and then 1 dice at range 3 and 4. Machine guns are a bit more effective. They roll 3 dice at ranges 1, 2 and 3, and then 1 dice at range 4 and 5. Mortars, I think it's 3 dice at range 1, 2 dice, 2 dice, 2 dice, and then 1 dice and 1 dice, I think it is. Yeah. And then, as I say, bombers basically give you a bonus up to range 2.
Yeah, they give them a close combat bonus, don't they?
Yeah, they get. Yeah, is an extra dice in close combat?
Yeah,
and then, but also you hit on skulls.
Yeah,
which you don't normally do.
Well. So it's just, it turns a rifle section into a sort of a close combat specialist. It's the early tactics that they used to use with bayonet and bombermen.
Yeah,
bayonet men clearing the trench, bomberman chucking them over the top of his head.
Yeah. So they're the 4 units you get in the game. Only other special rule that's definitely worth mentioning is that machine guns have a crossfire rule. If you target one unit with more than one unit of machine guns, you can basically gang up all your battle dice into one roll, which potentially is important because
you're rolling multiples.
And but
rolling multiple flags.
Yeah, and it's rolling dice. It's rolling values that otherwise that unit can ignore because of terrain. Terrain, as you probably imagine, has quite a big effect on the game, and especially trenches and shell craters. trenches especially, if you're in a trench,
It's attritional warfare.
yeah. I mean, okay, now normally if you're in the open, okay, you are an infantry unit is hit on an infantryman or a shell burst, and also flags affect them. Okay, so you get obviously that's basically a 50% chance of being hit because you have 2 infantrymen, and then obviously the flag is a retreat. When you're in a trench, you can ignore the first 2 flags and first 2 infantrymen, can't you?
Yep.
Okay, so the only thing that will affect you in a trench, unless you're rolling massive amounts of dice, are explosions.
Yeah, it's the explosion marker on the dice, isn't
the
it?
explosion marker. Okay, so or as Dave put it, you need to roll 6. which is it became a bit of a mantra in our first game, because
So you can roll 6.
especially since we were sat in trenches opposite each other and we were all within rifle and machine gun range. So the vast majority of the evening was spent with us in our respective trenches, taking pot shots at each other. And because it's extreme range, it's 1 dice.
I think that was our first game, wasn't it?
Yeah, 1 dice roll of 6, isn't it?
It does play an effect in the game. I think you soften up the opposition with a few single 6s if you can get them. But the killer in the whole game really is, and the key to it is playing your combat cards effectively. That makes the big difference in the game.
Yeah, as you'd expect, being in a trench gives you a massive amount of cover advantage. So being able to remove the trench through essentially a lucky roll of artillery, because it is a lucky roll. I think I managed to do it once, where I've actually blown up a trench hex. If you manage to get into a trench, you can attack the trench next door with a combat advantage. Or you get less of cover advantage if you're attacking from an adjacent trench hex. Other than that, say trenches give a massive amount. So one of the reasons for say using machine gun crossfire, for example, is because you have this thing that you can ignore 2 flags and 2 infantrymen. Obviously, normally the maximum number of dice that a machine gun can roll is 3. So you're only ever going to maximum get 1 hit. Even if you roll 3 infantrymen, you're going to get which is a 2 in 6 on each dice. That's only 2 can be ignored, so that's 1 hit. However, if you put a crossfire in, you could potentially roll up to 6 dice. So you could still potentially get 6 hits, which is enough to wipe out the unit. Okay, so it is an advantage ganging up with machine guns. So machine guns can potentially be deadly. Now, you win the game by getting victory markers. Victory markers are usually obtained in 2 different ways: destroying units and obtaining objectives. The majority of the time, objectives, especially for the Brits, will be capturing trenches, i.e. getting troops into your opponent's trench lines. And that will normally give you a temporary victory marker as long as your troops remain in that trench. And games are normally played to 6 or 7 victory markers, something like that. Okay, so attain objectives, wipe out the enemy, and that's how you win the game. That's really about it as far as all the rules and everything are concerned. I think there's much more to say about that, to be honest, from the command cards and stuff is concerned. So basically it boils down to, I think, what do we think about it and how do we think it actually reflects on World War I combat? I mean, interestingly enough, when I was reporting on the Command and Colours games on the blog, there's a couple of people that said, well, yeah, it's all well and good playing playing a C&C game, but how does that reflect Napoleonic warfare?
and it's relevant, I think, within when you're using this game mechanic. How well does this reflect World War One warfare? So, what do we think?
Attritional.
We've used that word a lot in the last couple of weeks, haven't we?
It is. It's an attritional game. It has all the flavour, I think, of a World War One game. Whether you like it is obviously down to a personal preference.
So you think it actually models World War One pretty well?
Yeah, as far as a board game sort of war game hybrid can. I think it does give lots of flavour, and it is quite. I mean, I was quite sceptical to start with.
No, you sceptic? No,
actually,
surely not.
Yeah, I quite. After the second game, I was beginning to quite like it. I do quite like how the cards all link together.
I know after the introductory scenario, you really weren't quite that very impressed.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think if players come along and they play that introductory scenario, they might sort of go, yeah, it's roll a 6.
It's roll a 6, and if you step out into because after that first scenario, we basically turned around and went, okay, so the tactics are fairly obvious. What you've got to do is you have to make sure that before you step out outside of your trench, you've knocked out your opponent's machine guns. Otherwise, you're going to die. Which, some people would turn around and say, well, that's very in keeping with that's very in keeping with the with the period. But
does that make a game?
Does that make a good game? Yeah, because you can turn around. Yeah, you can turn around and say, okay, the tactics are, unless you knock out your enemy's machine guns, it's just no use going anywhere, because you're then advancing in the open. As we discovered last week, this no man's land pre-shelling is absolutely vital for the game, because, as in real life, it provides cover. Yeah. Shell holes provide cover. So you end up in... So a lot of your advances over no man's land is running between shell holes.
Leapfrogging, which was tactically was done.
Yeah. So that is that, and then hoping at some point you've blown a hole in the wire, because what barbed wire will do, it will hold you up for a turn while you cut through the barbed wire. Once you cut through the barbed wire, fine. But it will hold you up. And of course, you're held up in no man's land, in the open. Not necessarily a good idea. It does. So from that side of things, it does kind of mirror World War One pretty well. If you're in a trench, it's very difficult to inflict casualties.
Difficult to inflict casualties in any significant amount in one hit. And that's the attritional side of the game.
Yeah, and that actually reflects on when we turn around and say, yes, you can play this game in 90 minutes. Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Primarily, again, because especially if you're engaging the enemy, you're relying and they're in a trench. You're relying on the fact of you're rolling either massive amounts of dice against them, so you're hoping to get masses of infantry symbols, or you're relying on that 1 in 6 hit. We had an instance last week when I got accused of target fixation. I was determined. Now, one of the standard war games things is concentrate fire on a unit until you remove that unit from action. And once you've got a small unit, they should be easy to take out. And of course, taking out units in this game provides you with victory points. How many dice did I roll against that one unit? 20?
Don't know now.
20 plus? Okay, Dave had one particular unit. He advanced it. The first scenario, the Germans are defending what are effectively 3 lines of trenches. The Brits have got to get into the first two. If they get into either of the first 2 lines of trenches, they get a victory point for each line of trench they invade. So Dave managed to get into the first line of trenches. I've got a load of troops in the second line of trenches, who then start engaging back. And I target this one unit, and each unit has 4 models. Okay, now they operate at full effectiveness until all the models are removed from play. But I got it down to 1 model on this one unit. Now, the way it was the unit was on the other flank from where the main attack was developing. Okay, but especially looking at the cards I had in my hand, I couldn't really affect I could see where the main attack was coming, but I couldn't really affect it that well. Plus the fact if I killed this unit, I could on the other flank. 1 model left. I could get a victory point. And I must have thrown 20 dice. 24 dice on this model before effectively I rolled a 6. Before I finally got a shell symbol.
It's a attritional game, what can I say?
Because he was sat in a trench. Whether that's... I had machine gun crossfire on him and everything.
Keeping his head down. Didn't want to get onto the parapet. Sensible man.
Oh, I tell you. And of course, that's... I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it... Well, you're probably saying it's wrong.
No, not at all. I mean...
But, sometimes you look at it...
It's hard to hit men in trenches. Don't rely on it.
But, but sometimes you get to that point where you think, blooming out, I've been concentrating so much effort on that one unit. I am damn well going to kill it.
You have to... This whole game revolves around... Like, there's 3 sort of stages in it. It's getting across no man's land and getting in the opposition's trench. From there, it is trying to clear the opposition out of the trench.
Yeah. Now, whilst if you're attacking into adjacent trenches don't give as much cover as they normally do. They have the cover abilities reduced by 1. That's only for adjacent trenches. So it is very, these games are very much a case of get across no man's land, get into your opponent's trench, and then it's hand-to-hand combat through the trenches.
So it does what it says on the tin.
It does.
It's World War One.
It does exactly what it says on the tin, but it does make for some very long games. Primarily because obviously from a tactics point of view, what you're trying to do is to get your hand to a point where you can execute an attack in a particular area over a number of turns
without leaving your troops in the open.
And also ideally with the right combination of these combat cards to support what you're doing. As I said, the combat cards aren't game breakers, but the right combination of combat cards certainly helps. And you're hoping that your opponent doesn't have a number of combat cards that will negate yours, or that will put a hole in your plan. I think without the combat cards, I think they are a bit of a game changer.
Yeah, it's what makes the game, really. The combat cards do.
Yeah, without them, I think it could potentially be very dry and a very long game.
Very dry and very long.
Yeah. The artillery, as I said, the artillery is a nice touch, but it's not. It's not a game breaker. It can. If you roll an awful lot of the same number, it can be a game changer in particular on a particular hex. It can potentially cause a lot of damage.
It can't be relied on.
No, not at all. Not at all. If you rely on your artillery to make any sort of impact in the game,
you'll spend a lot of HQ tokens for no reason.
Yeah, it's a bonus when it does. It can be very useful. We've seen it go right. We've seen it go very wrong. Even when firing against mass targets, you're only guaranteed 1 hit, and that's 1 hit on the hex that you're aiming for.
When we say hit, we mean a shell landing in the target zone.
A shell landing in the target zone, which means that you roll, you roll 1 dice for effect for each hit in the target zone, and especially if that's against a trench. Yeah, as you say, it's a 1 in 6 chance. Sorry, it's 2 in 6 because it's artillery.
Yeah.
But even so, so they're not game changers, but certainly without the artillery, without the combat cards, I think it would be
slow.
I mean, as you say, it's slower. I mean, even with it's like, I don't know. I don't know if we're particularly slow players.
I don't think we are because of we've been playing CNC for as long as we've known each other in one shape or form.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think, to be honest, the speed of the game and how slow it takes is a bad thing. To be honest, I quite like the game. I do quite like how attritional it is. It does what it says on the tin, Neil, and I think it comes down to what type of gamer you are, whether you're going to like this or not.
Yeah.
Or if you like the period, if you're really interested in the period, then you might like it. If you're a gamer that likes open play and likes lots of movement, you're not going to like this, are you?
No,
unless for some strange reason there's a little nick in the back of your mind where you do like that sort of stuff. But if your gaming is revolved around a lot of movement and so on and so forth, and that's what you enjoy, you're not going to really. I don't think many people of that type of gamer will enjoy it.
Charge didn't work, did it?
Charge didn't work now.
No, especially across the open.
Let's face it, your charges don't work very often, whatever period we're playing.
It looked good. I mean, it was 4 units. It was 4 units on a trench. It was half my army on a trench raid.
Fine body of men, Blackadder.
Yes, and plus the fact it didn't help that you had a particular card that ended up completely negating all the casualties I just caused because you then just ended up replacing all the casualties that I just because there's of one particular card.
It's a medic, isn't it? It's the medic card, basically.
Yes.
Is it called physician? Is it in this?
Or something? Is it the reinforcements one?
I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's a card that's in every game. It's in every CNC game. It just so happened that Dave rolled particularly well and got exactly what he needed to bring all his units that are just whittled down and then close assaulted back up to full strength. Which they then ordered, and then they battled against me. And suffice it to say, the result, especially since he was still in the trench, and I was out in the open, adjacent to the trench. It wasn't pretty. No. So, if you do a trench assault, you've got to make darn sure that you get into the trench.
Yeah, it's no good swinging in the breeze, as they say.
No, it's no good getting up next to the trench and then not getting into the trench, because if you don't get into the trench on your turn, you are going to be in you're going to be up a creek without a paddle.
I mean, what we're finding on both games, though, even if you just get, say, one or two of your units into the enemy's trench, you start causing problems, don't you?
Yeah, very much so. Now, we were wondering whether there doesn't, in some ways, there doesn't appear to be a lot of advantage for being in a trench and then like firing down trenches. Well, I'm assuming, again, one of those things is the fact that, well, okay, obviously when you talk about a trench, if you think about it, there's still an awful lot of cover, even when you're in a trench and you're firing down a trench at other people.
And trenches weren't built in straight lines for that very reason.
Oh, quite. So, even if you're assaulting in a longer trench, it's hard work. So, as you say, it does exactly what it says on the tin.
It does. I think the thing is I don't think World War One has ever been the most prolific of periods for the wargaming industry, has it? I mean, there is some rule sets out there, and there's some rule sets out there, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of people go, I've been playing Mud and the Blood, and it's brilliant, I love it, and it is. It's a good game, but it's never been the most popular period, has it? From gamers, really.
Oh, no, not at all. And potentially there is a reason behind it. Now, despite the fact that some people argue that the First World War was where the birth of modern troop tactics came from, and certainly that will be something that will be argued by our good friend Mr. Clark. And it's right. However, depending on what you play, Whether or not this completely reflects it, well, I suppose this is a lot more of a generic light war game, isn't it?
Yeah.
So and
I think it gives you World War One flavour in dollops. It gives it. There's plenty in there.
oh yeah,
You're
yeah.
definitely not playing Memoir 44.
No,
Without a doubt, you're not playing Memoir 44.
not at all.
Completely different beast. I think it's a completely different beast, really, from all the CNCs, really.
Yeah, as I say, I mean, even with, I talked about, okay, yeah, the combat cards is like playing battle, and obviously with the way that, limited number of units, the way they all work together, and and especially the way the trench cover works, it makes for a completely different game all of its own. As it stands, it all holds together really well. Our question mark is, yeah, that's fine, but how good a game does that actually make it?
Yeah, it's a case of there's nothing wrong with the game.
No.
Is it the period? Does World War One not make a good game per se? The period. I mean, personally, I like the game, but I could see some people being turned away from it.
I must admit, when Dave turns around and says, personally, I like the game. If you'd listened, if you've been on my end of the table listening to the grumbling that's been coming to me from across the table over the last 2 weeks, I mean, and when you talk about, well, actually, I like the game. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Well, it wasn't so much grumbling. It was just the roll of 6. But then when you start realising how you're supposed to play the game, and
Like
combat cards, and I do quite like the combat cards, to be honest, especially to see your face, Neil, when I play Matahari on you,
yeah,
or any of the others.
Just for future reference, I'm taking that card out of the deck now. But it's rather interesting. This is something we were flagging earlier. I can't remember if you already said it, but yeah, this combat card deck is going to start appearing certainly in Commander Colours Napoleonics. The next expansion is to produce tactics cards.
I wish they didn't call them both with C. That does me.
Well,
Command cards and combat cards. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that says more about me than it does about anyone else. I'd rather just called them orders cards and combat cards, or order cards and tactic cards would have been better, I think. Order cards and tactic cards.
Yeah. Yeah. Because tactic cards kind of describes more what they do.
Yeah.
But as you say, without them, I think the game wouldn't work anywhere near as well.
No, it'd be without those combat cards, it'd be a complete slugfest.
Yeah,
it would be. It'd be toe to toe.
Yes, it'd be even more of a slugfest than it already is. It will be interesting to see what they do in future. I mean, for example, as we've already mentioned, snipers are missing. Why on earth you didn't have a combat card for a sniper?
That did surprise me. I was expecting to go through the deck there and find a sniper card.
At least one sniper card.
Yeah, I was surprised. Because that was before you'd even opened the box. I was taking that as a given. There'd be a sniper card in there,
and the fact that there isn't is it seems to be a bit of a surprise.
There's a few of the ones that I do like. I like Lice. That's funny. Gas attack.
Yeah, there's things like that which
shell shortage.
Yeah, there's some nice little cards which you can just play alongside stuff and really mess your opponent up, or give you a bit of a boost. Then none of them are particular game breakers. There's a couple we kind of think, really, and that only costs this number of HQ.
What we did discover, didn't we, in the second game was that some of these cards, even though they might cost very little to activate, you can see that some of them are only good in certain situations in certain games, and in other games you'd want to get that card straight out your hand because it's dead, it's worthless. You having it in your hand.
However, in those certain situations they can be,
you think that might be a bit cheap for that one, but
but then again, as you say, it only works in particular situations, so maybe that's where it offsets. Rules wise, okay, we are experienced Command and Colours players. We have played all games in this, probably except for the Samurai one, because that's still in the box. But we have played all games in this series multiple times. If you are an experienced Command and Colours player, read the rules. We got the first game wrong. Because we ended up halfway through the game, suddenly stopping and going, so how do we refresh these command tokens again? Because we were using command tokens and and not really refreshing them with anything. You're thinking, okay, there's something wrong here. Yeah, this is a resource we should be replenishing in some way, shape or form. And it turns out we'd missed a bit. So it is really worth going through and making sure you read the rule book, but also making sure that you read all bits of the rule book and not just saying, oh, okay, I read the rule and I know what the rule does because it's the first sentence says it does this.
Where's the paragraph? Where is it? It's brilliant.
There is one where basically it says this does this. Except when this happens. And also it means that. Hang on, isn't it?
It's the artillery one, isn't it?
One?
It's one of the artillery ones, which we thought we were playing it right,
and then we reread it again,
and then you read the second paragraph underneath, and it was like
was grenade, or was it grenades? I can't find out, but there's definitely one where you read it, and
it was like, when this happens, only this symbol and this symbol hits. Paragraph. Unless this is the situation, and then this hits.
And this hits as well. Oh, right, okay. So please just make sure that you
read all paragraphs.
Read all your paragraphs of a rule, otherwise you may miss something. That said, as you say, game-wise, are we going to be playing it again?
I'd like to play it again.
Yeah,
I think it does what it says on the tin.
Yeah,
it's World War One. World War One is what you get.
Yeah,
if you buy this game and then all of a sudden you go, well, it's a bit attritional. It can be a bit micromanagement at times.
You can roll an awful lot of dice and
get nothing.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised, it's World War One.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. That doesn't mean that the tactics aren't within the game, because they are. But sometimes your opponent or you might just get that little bit lucky. You get a lucky break with an artillery barrage, which just opens that wire a little bit more, or just knocks that unit out, or in that front trench that gives you the opening that you need.
Yeah. But other than that, the tactics that you would expect, which is you're attacking the opponent's trench, so you've got to hop from your trench through cover, through the wire into your opponent's trench. If possible, in the meantime, you've knocked out their machine guns. You do not want to be facing their machine guns in the open, and then at that point, things like your bomber units come into their own because they're really good in close combat.
They start clearing down the trench.
That, and as we've already said, that to us sounds a bit like World War One. And actually, if you use those tactics, that's the way. That's a lot of way to play the game. Other ways of playing the game are available.
Be prepared to sit there for a long time if you play it any other way,
and be prepared to die, because that's what I did. Charge.
Yeah. Don't play it like Memoir.
Don't play it like Memoir. Yeah, it's a lot less forgiving than Memoir. If you can imagine, if you're a Memoir player, if you can imagine if 2/3 of the board were covered in town hexes, because that's what it's like. That's what it's like. It will be really interesting to see where they take it. As I said, in a lot of these scenarios, we have the Brits attacking the Germans. You can certainly see come next year, when we had the French on, there'll be an awful lot of Germans attacking French.
I'm not so interested in the bringing in the tanks and things like that, because it's a bit of a strange fight when it comes to the Germans with tanks and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that is one thing we're thinking of, because obviously with the tank being a British invention, and it did,
the Germans being a bit of an afterthought. really.
Yeah, I mean, what was it A7Vs? There's only 20 of them that they ever built or something. And
Something like that.
I mean, know that there's probably only ever a couple of tank-on-tank engagements. So it will be interesting to see what they did with that.
I think for me personally, the other interest is to bring in the more the support weapons and the variants of different infantry.
Yeah.
So have the Germans bringing in flamethrowers, stormtroopers, snipers, engineers, a balloon or two maybe, to help direct their artillery.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's so it'll be interesting. And say, of course, bring the French in different scenarios. I'm sure that the big thing with the French will be around Verdun. See what happens, given the size of the board, it'll be interesting if they ever do an epic version of it. They put the two boards side by side, and what extra added value that may add. I'm not 100% sure whether it would add that much to the game. In and of itself, it's well self-contained. The bigger board does work well. It gives you, as I say, that you certainly those extra 2 hexes, especially with the range of the weapons, and just how much, especially like if you're attacking a trench system, that you have to. It gives room to have 4 trench lines on the board. I'm sure that's the reason why they did it. So you end up with the one hex, the rear hex is the German second line of reserve hex, second reserve trench. Then you got your first reserve trench, and then you got your front line trench, and then you got another British trench beyond that. And I'm sure that's why they put the board 11 deep, so you can actually have that sort of setup. So yeah, it works. It will be interesting to see where they go with it. It will be interesting, especially when they start working on, Mediterranean and Eastern Front. What they do.
First World War in the mountains. That'd be good.
Yeah, you can certainly. Yes. So it has a lot of potential in its current format. It's a challenging game. It certainly plays longer than we think than it potentially advertises. Not necessarily a bad reason. A bad thing.
No, not a bad thing at all. It's an enjoyable game.
Yeah. So I think we're about done, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Down the pub.
Right. So what's left to say is that is The Great War. Available from Plastic Soldier Company, and since it's a board game, probably your local friendly board game retailer in the not too distant future. If you're a CNC fan, or if you want to, from my point of view, the reason I got it was I was thinking, well, I like Command and Colours. I probably won't play World War One any other way. I mean, the ultimate irony is that I sold a 28mm World War One German figure collection about 3 weeks before the Great War Kickstarter came along. So basically, what I sold, about 2/3 of what I sold my 28mm World War One German army for, went to buy this box, which is a little bit ironic.
But it's easy to store this now, and you haven't got to paint it.
But it's figures, Dave. They look nice painted.
Yeah, these have got less chance of being painted than your French army. Let's face it.
Yeah, there is that.
They don't need to be painted.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
I mean, the Germans are in grey, the Brits are in brown.
Yeah, and
for those watching on a black and white television,
as you can imagine, from the Plastic Soldier Company point of view, all of a sudden they've also now got half of a World War One range, or start of a World War One range available, And I'm sure that's the main reason why they actually brought the artillery out. Unless, of course, as I say, there's, we're likely to see an expansion in the future that will actually make them a useful on-board addition, as opposed to just a fancy off-table marker.
I think if you've always fancied playing World War One, but you didn't really want to invest as a wargamer, but you didn't really want to invest in a full army, etc., and a full rule set and all the rest of it that comes with it, this little box sort of scratches the itch if you've got it.
Yeah.
At a reasonable price, and it's all self-contained. Away you go. You haven't got to invest lots of time and money in building up a figure collection or learning a rule set.
And, as we said right at the start, it is very pretty. The artwork is really nice. The artwork on the cards is nice.
Definitely nailed the artwork.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So it's, as you say, it scratches the itch.
Yeah.
And having bought this, I'm honest about it, I'm thinking, I don't think I'll do anything else World War One. I'll certainly look at the expansions, although even buying the expansions, I don't know it's a given. I think I'm probably more interested in the infantry expansions as opposed to tanks. But as I say, it scratches an itch. So yeah, self-contained, decent price. Yeah, what more can we say?
Well, what more can you want?
Indeed. So there we have it, Great War, and I think that's about it for this show. So I'll probably talk more than enough.
It's good night from him. It's good night from her.
Her? Yeah. So what I'd say is thanks a lot for listening. I hope you found this enjoyable. It's nice to have Dave on the show. What are you looking at me like that for?
I don't know. We'll wait for everyone to complain and go, why you got that div back on again?
Yeah. Wasn't Clarkson sacked?
Yeah, that's right. Where's the Welsh wizard? Get him back on.
Yeah, but you're bigger than Mike.
Well,
and you're my gaming buddy.
am I? Oh right. I've been promoted then.
What? As opposed to my nemesis?
Oh.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm thinking when I introduce you on the show in future, I'm just going to start playing, the Imperial March.
It's not my fault you can't roll dice now.
So, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, happy gaming. See ya. Thank you for listening to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you want to know more about Meeples and Miniatures, there are several things you can do. First of all, you can visit the website at www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. If you want to contact the show at all, you can email me at neil@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. You can follow the show on Twitter. Simply look for M&M Podcast or click the follow us on Twitter button from the website. We also have a group on Facebook. That's the Meeples and Miniatures Podcast Fan Club. Again, follow the link from the website. And finally, if you want to help to support the show, you can always donate to the podcast by clicking the PayPal button on the donate page, again found on the website. Once again, thank you for listening. I hope you've really enjoyed the show. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.